Dumpty sailed a war. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again.
Everything you know about Humpty Dumpty is a lie. The egg that sat on the wall never existed. The character you grew up with, the round, fragile creature in every children's book, every cartoon, every classroom poster, was never part of the original story. Go ahead. Read the rhyme again. Read it carefully. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Show me where it says egg. I'll wait. You won't find it, because it was never there. The egg is a cultural illusion, a lie so successful, so perfectly embedded in our collective memory that we never thought to question it. We accepted it as children. We taught it to our children, and the lie survived. But here's what they don't tell you. The rhyme wasn't always innocent. It wasn't always simple. And once you learn who Humpty Dumpty really was, or more precisely what the rhyme was designed to hide, you'll understand why that lie had to survive. Because some truths are too unsettling to teach children, and some riddles were never meant to be solved. Let's start with what we know. Humpty Dumpty began as a riddle, not a story, not a character, a riddle. In the early 19th century, when the rhyme first appeared in print, Victorian children heard it and understood immediately what they were supposed to solve. Adults didn't need to explain. The structure of the verse itself contained the answer. What sits precariously? What breaks beyond repair? What cannot be reconstructed, no matter how many hands try? An egg. The answer was so obvious to children of that era that publishers never bothered writing it down. The riddle was the text. The solution was implied. But here's where it gets interesting. The structure of that riddle, the metaphorical architecture of it, wasn't arbitrary. The image of something fragile, something that falls, something that shatters irreversibly. This wasn't just a puzzle for children. It was a framework for something deeper. And that framework connected to fears that were very, very real. Let's go to the source. The earliest known printing of Humpty Dumpty appears in a manuscript dated 1797, found in the collection of Samuel Arnold's Juvenile Amusements. The pages are yellowed now, the ink faded to a rust brown, but the words are still legible. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. 70 men and 70 more cannot place Humpty Dumpty as he was before. Notice what's missing. No king's horses, no king's men, no egg. The 1810 version, published by Joseph Ritson, is nearly identical. Then in 1842, James Orchard Halliwell's Nursery Rhymes of England gives us the version most of us recognize, but even then, Humpty Dumpty is never described. There's no physical detail, no mention of a shell, no yolk, no whites. Halliwell's collection labels it clearly a riddle. And in smaller text below, almost as an afterthought, he adds the solution in brackets. But that's the publisher's note, not the rhyme itself. The original text gives you nothing. No hints, no descriptions, just the image of a fall and the impossibility of repair. And that's exactly how riddles work. They withhold, they conceal, they make you search for the answer in the space between the words. But if Humpty Dumpty was always a riddle, when did he become an egg in our minds? And more importantly, why? The transformation didn't happen by accident, it happened in 1871. Lewis Carroll published Through the Looking Glass, and in chapter 6, Alice meets a character sitting on a wall. His name is Humpty Dumpty, and for the first time in literary history, he is explicitly, undeniably, an egg. Carroll describes him as shaped exactly like an egg, with a face, a cravat, and a condescending attitude. The illustrator, John Tenniel, cemented the image with a drawing that would define Humpty Dumpty for the next 150 years. A large, oval, anthropomorphic egg with spindly legs and an arrogant smirk. And just like that, the riddle became a character. Halliwell's collections, reprinted throughout the 1840s and 50s, began adding editorial notes that solved the riddle for young readers. Victorian magazines published illustrated versions with eggs perched on walls. Teachers used the rhyme as a memory exercise, always explaining, Humpty Dumpty is an egg. By the 1880s, the egg was canon, but here's the question no one asked. If the egg was always the answer, why did Carroll feel the need to invent a character to embody it? Why did Victorian England need to visualize Humpty Dumpty? Because once you put a face on a riddle, it stops being a riddle. It becomes a story, and stories are easier to control. Now we arrive at the myths within the myth. Over the last century, historians, folklorists, and amateur enthusiasts have constructed elaborate backstories for Humpty Dumpty. They've tried to find the real event behind the rhyme. Let me introduce you to the three most popular theories, and then let me show you why they're all fabrications. The claim, Humpty Dumpty was King Richard III of England, the hunchbacked king, the one who fell at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485, the one whose body was hacked apart and could never be put together again. It's poetic, it's dramatic, it connects a nursery rhyme to one of the most infamous deaths in English history. There's just one problem. The rhyme didn't exist in 1485. It didn't exist in 1585. It didn't exist until 1797, over 300 years after Richard's death. No contemporary accounts mention a rhyme. No Elizabethan sources reference Humpty Dumpty. No Tudor-era manuscripts preserve this connection. The theory was invented in the 20th century by authors who wanted to make the rhyme more interesting. They retrofitted a historical event onto a riddle that had nothing to do with monarchy. It's a clever story. But stories aren't evidence. The claim. During the English Civil War in 1648, Royalist forces defended the town of Colchester with a massive cannon mounted on the church tower of St. Mary at the Walls. The cannon's name was Humpty Dumpty, When parliamentary forces destroyed the tower, the cannon fell and no one could reassemble it. This one sounds convincing. It has a date, a location, a weapon, even a church with wall in the name. But here's the reality. There is no contemporary record of a cannon named Humpty Dumpty at Colchester, no military logs, no siege accounts, no letters, no diaries. The story first appeared in a 1956 edition of the Oxford Dictionary of Nursery Rhymes, citing a local tradition. But when historians went searching for that tradition, they found nothing. No 17th century sources, no 18th century sources, not even 19th century sources. The tradition was invented in the 20th century. The cannon never existed. The claim, Humpty Dumpty was a tortoise, a medieval siege engine used in 1643 during the Siege of Gloucester. It was positioned on a city wall and collapsed when the wall was breached. Same problem, no records, no documentation, no historical mention of anything called Humpty Dumpty. This theory appeared even later than the cannon myth, published in the 1990s by regional historians trying to give their city a claim to the rhyme's origin. But folklore doesn't work that way. You can't invent a legend 350 years after the fact and call it history. Here's the pattern. Every single historical origin for Humpty Dumpty was fabricated centuries after the rhyme appeared. These aren't lost histories rediscovered. They're modern myths, dressed up as scholarship, designed to give a children's riddle the weight of tragedy. Scholars of folklore regard these theories as exactly what they are. Folklore, about folklore, stories we tell about stories, lies stacked on lies. But if Humpty Dumpty wasn't a king, or a cannon, or a siege engine, then what was he? Strip away the false histories and what remains is the riddle, and riddles in their purest form are always about something other than what they describe. In the 19th century, commentators began interpreting Humpty Dumpty not as a historical figure, but as an allegory, a moral warning, a symbol of something universal. What they saw was this: Humpty Dumpty represented the fall from grace, the irreversible collapse of innocence, the shattering of the soul, the moment when purity breaks, and no amount of intervention, no king's horses, no king's men, no earthly power can restore what was lost. Think of it like Adam's fall, the expulsion from Eden, the breaking of the divine, or think of it as the moment a child learns cruelty. The instant trust is shattered, the second a lie is told that can never be taken back. Humpty Dumpty wasn't a person, he was a state of being, and the wall he sat on, that was the precarious edge between wholeness and ruin. One slip, one fall, and everything fractures. The Victorians understood this instinctively. They lived in an age obsessed with moral decay, with the fragility of the social order, with the fear that civilization itself was one scandal, one war, one collapse away from irreversible chaos. Humpty Dumpty was their nightmare, not because he was an egg, but because he represented the thing they feared most, that some damage cannot be undone. Let's take this further. Modern psychologists have looked at the Humpty Dumpty rhyme and seen something even more disturbing. They see trauma, they see dissociation, they see the fragmentation of the self. In psychological terms, the fall isn't physical, it's emotional. It's the moment when a person's sense of identity shatters through abuse, through betrayal, through a trauma so severe that the psyche breaks into pieces. And the tragedy of Humpty Dumpty isn't just that he fell, it's that he cannot be put together again. No therapy, no intervention, no support system, not even all the king's horses and all the king's men can restore the person who existed before the fracture. This is the psychology of PTSD, of personality disorders, of survivors who say, "I'm not the person I was before," because they're not. The old self is gone. Humpty Dumpty isn't a cautionary tale about being careful. It's a lament for the things that cannot be repaired, for the cracks that never heal, for the parts of us that, once broken, stay broken. Now we enter the realm of the speculative, but stay with me, because if you look at Humpty Dumpty through the lens of ancient mythology and esoteric symbolism, something remarkable emerges. The egg, in nearly every culture, represents creation, the cosmic egg, the world egg, the Orphic egg of Greek mysticism, from which the universe itself was born. In Hinduism, the Brahmanda, the cosmic egg, contains all of existence. In Chinese mythology, Pangu emerged from the egg that divided heaven and earth. In alchemy, the egg represents the prima materia, the original unified substance that must be broken and transformed to create gold. The egg is the beginning, and when the egg breaks, creation splinters. What if Humpty Dumpty isn't about a fall from innocence, but about the fall into existence? What if the wall represents the threshold between the unmanifest and the manifest, the moment before creation, and the fall, the breaking of the egg, is the shattering of unity into multiplicity, the one becoming the many, the moment when wholeness fractures into the chaos of the world. And the tragedy? The tragedy is that once existence begins, it cannot be undone. You cannot unbreak the cosmic egg. You cannot return to the singularity. All the king's horses and all the king's men, all the forces of the universe cannot restore the original unity. This is speculative, yes, but it's compelling, because if Humpty Dumpty is a cosmic allegory, then it's not a children's rhyme at all. It's a meditation on the nature of existence itself, on the irreversibility of creation, on the loss of the divine. So why did the egg myth survive? Why do we still picture Humpty Dumpty as a cheerful, fragile creature instead of a symbol of existential collapse? Because the lie was easier. The egg answer was simple, memorable, child-friendly. Once Lewis Carroll gave Humpty Dumpty a face, once Tenniel gave him a body, the visual canon took over. The riddle was forgotten, the deeper meanings were buried, and the lie was repeated in picture books, in cartoons, in toys, in classroom decorations. Every generation taught the next that Humpty Dumpty was an egg, and every generation accepted it without question. This is how myths are made, not through conspiracy, not through deliberate deception, but through repetition. Tell a lie enough times and it becomes truth. Show an image enough times and it becomes reality. We never questioned it because it was the answer given to us in childhood. The lie became a lullaby, and lullabies don't need to be true, they just need to be comforting. So here's where we are. Humpty Dumpty was never an egg, he was never a king, he was never a canon, he was a riddle designed to make you think. And what the riddle taught was this: some things, once broken, stay broken. Some falls have no recovery, some damage is permanent. Whether you interpret that as moral collapse, psychological trauma, or the shattering of cosmic unity, the message is the same. The Victorians knew this. That's why they softened the rhyme. That's why they turned it into a children's game, a puzzle with an easy answer. Because the real answer, the one hidden in the structure of the verse, was too dark for the nursery. It told children that the world is fragile, that innocence is temporary, that some things cannot be saved. And so they gave us an egg, a simple, silly, fragile egg. And we believed it, because the alternative was too terrifying to teach. Long pause. But now you know, and you can never unknow it. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. And the truth is, he was never meant to be put together again. The next time you see Humpty Dumpty in a children's book, smiling from his wall, remember what he really represents. Not a character, not a creature, but a warning, a reminder that some fractures are forever, and some riddles were never meant to be solved.